What's up, YouTube family? Today we're going to go ahead and react to see what Jordan Peterson has to say about the Bible to none other than Mr. Joe Rogan. Now, I'm not considering myself a Bible expert or a Bible thumper or some sort of Bible scholar, theologian, whatever, but for the most part, I do know a thing or two about the Holy Bible. I talk about it, I preach about it, and whenever given the opportunity, I can talk about it in public or just, through all these videos. But let's see what Jordan Peterson has to say to Joe Rogan about it.
That's what the Bible
Yeah, it's what
provides.
I figured out. I just figured this out this week. In many ways, the first book was the Bible. I mean, literally, because at one point there was only one book. Like, as far as our Western culture is concerned, there was one book. And for a while, literally, there was only one book. And that book was the Bible. And then before it was the Bible, it was, it was scrolls and it was writings on papyrus. But we were starting to aggregate written text together. And it went through all sorts of technological transformations, and then it became books that everybody could buy, the book everybody could buy, and the first one of those was the Bible, and then it became all sorts of books that everybody could buy. But all those books, in some sense, emerged out of that underlying book. And that book itself, the Bible isn't a book, it's a library.
Right.
It's a collection of books. And so, what I figured out was, partly because I was talking to my brother-in-law, Jim Keller, who's the world's greatest chip designer and has now designed a chip that's as powerful as the human brain, which is optimized for artificial intelligence learning,
Really?
by the way. And so I talked to him about that. He said, "You heard of the internet?" I said, "Yeah, Jim, I've heard of the internet." He said, "This is way more revolutionary than that." So in any case, we were talking about meaning in text because we were talking about translation and the problem of understanding text. And Jim said, the meaning of words is coded in the relationship of the words to one another.
Right.
And the postmodernists make that case that all meaning is derived from the relationship between words. That's wrong because, well, what about rage? That's not words. And what about moving your hand? That's not words. So it's wrong, but part of it's right because the meaning we derive from the verbal domain is encoded in the relationship between words. So now then you think, well, let's think about the relationship between words. Well, some words are dependent on other words. Some ideas are dependent on other ideas. The more ideas are dependent on a given idea, the more fundamental that idea is.
Okay.
That's a definition of fundamental. So now imagine you have an aggregation of texts in a civilization. You say, which are the fundamental texts? And the answer is the texts upon which most other texts depend. And so you'd put Shakespeare way in there in English because so many texts are dependent on Shakespeare's literary revelations. And Milton would be in that category, and Dante would be in that category, at least in translation. Fundamental authors, part of the Western canon, not because of the arbitrary dictates of power, but because those texts influenced more other texts. And then you think about that as a hierarchy.
It spreads.
Okay, with the Bible at its base, which is certainly the case.
Okay.
Now imagine that's the entire corpus of linguistic production, all things considered. Now how do you understand that? Like literally, how do you understand that? The answer is you sample it by reading and listening to stories and listening to people talk. You sample that whole domain.
So you
build a low resolution representation of that inside you, and then you listen and see through that. And so it isn't that the Bible is true. It's that the Bible is the precondition for the manifestation of truth.
It's the base.
Which makes it way more true than just true.
It's a base.
It's a whole different kind of truth. Okay. And I think this is not only literally the case, factually, I think it can't be any other way. It's the only way we can solve the problem of perception.
Interesting. It makes it seem like what he's saying is that the Bible is the basis of which things can grow from, right? In terms of the hierarchy that he's talking about. Like the Bible is at the top or the bottom. It's either the king or the foundation, but it could be both, right? So I think what he's trying to get at with what he's telling Joe Rogan is that the Bible encompasses so many truths and so much stuff comes from it that it's no wonder it's the book of mankind or a book of mankind, at least in part of the Western civilization which is what he was talking about, you get me? So it was interesting. It was very interesting. I mean, I do acknowledge that the Bible was written by different authors. That that I do acknowledge. And actually there's this YouTuber, or he's a YouTuber now, his name is Hovind. He has a lot of these theological discussions about who wrote the Bible, where did the Bible come from, and so on and so forth. But for this video alone, I don't know if he really like blew Joe Rogan's mind away or something like that, but it's interesting to see the connection. I feel like what Jordan Peterson did was he connected the Bible to the world in its simplest form, verbally, for people to understand it. But like, you know, Bible says there's something new under the sun. Whether he verbalized it in a way that more people can understand it, great. But I had a feeling that more people already knew about this. Like, I kind of had an idea of what the Bible actually is in terms of it compared to other literature. But with this video, I felt like Jordan Peterson's I can't even speak English. The way he uses his words is so profound that he basically verbalized what people think or what people have already known. Regardless, you know, someone else might see this video and be like, wow, this is crazy. The Bible is super cool, super accurate. So I think this is one of those seeds that have been planted in YouTube in terms of God's kingdom coming to earth, or in just terms of helping others spread the word of the Lord. You know, thank you so much for Motivation Kingdom. I'm gonna go ahead and link the video to them, link the video, which in turn will link you to their channel down below. But yeah, there's so many opinions about the Bible that it's almost unfathomable how many people like it and then also don't like it. At one point, I know it's still probably the most stolen book in the world, but which means people are willing to steal for the word of the Lord or just use it for other stuff. Regardless, the Bible is an incredible book. I recommend anybody to read it, at least a little bit of it. I always recommend starting in Proverbs, maybe even the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, and even see where you go from there. But other than that, this was a cool video. This was great, and stay blessed, you guys. Peace.